Well, Warm Bodies is a paranormal romantic zombie comedy. I think I said this before. I'll say it again. Wrap your mind around that concept. And it's based on a book of the same name written by Isaac Marion. It came out in 2011. This one is written and directed by Jonathan Levine. You may remember his name from 50-50 and The Whackness. He directed those films as well. But this movie is about a young zombie by the name of who wanders around an airport. What's interesting about this film is that, of course, zombies don't talk much beyond groans and growls. So especially in the beginning of the film, less so later on, but in the beginning of the film, you get a lot of voiceover of R in his mind, kind of telling you a little of the story about who he is, where he is. They don't go into a lot of talk about why the zombie apocalypse happened, anything like that, how he died or was turned into one. It's just, he's in an airport, he wanders around, he's, kind of thinking about what his life has turned into. He's got a friend of sorts named M, played by Rob Corddry. But the film starts gaining a bit of speed when a young woman named Julie and some of her friends are sent out by her father to find some medical supplies. Her group, which includes her boyfriend, is set upon by these zombies. Her boyfriend, when our hero R bites him and eats into his brain, one of the interesting things they do with this film, and it's not spoiling anything because it happens really early, but when a zombie eats a person's brain, they absorb a lot of their memories. And so as he's eating it, he's getting a lot of memories of this guy, Perry, and his girlfriend and their love for each other, sweet things that they kind of did with each other. And so it gives R that love. And so when he sees Julie, he suddenly feels the need to protect her. And as the film goes on, their relationship broadens and strengthens. And what happens to him because of that relationship begins to ripple out to the other zombies. If you've seen the trailer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Scotty, I'm interested to know, as far as zombie films go, and as far as romantic comedies go, do you feel like this bridged that gap well as far as the storyline goes, or do you feel like it went a little too far one way or another?
To say it bridged the gap between those two genres is that's a tall task, and to say that it succeeded or failed, how do you answer that? Because I mean, you're looking at two completely opposite ends of a spectrum. I think it did the best job that it could have, because it gave it a very tongue-in-cheek yet sweet tone to it. I don't know how else you could have bridged those two together. I love the concept of like zombies coming back, and I love that there's not any explanation. You're just kind of thrown into it. How else could they have done it? What do you think, Justin?
Well, I mean, when it comes to zombie films, 99.9% of the time you are getting a horror or action film. Mm-hmm. There is usually very little romance involved. And if there is, it's purely the hero and whoever his arm candy happens to be in that film, and are they going to make it through it together? This film, though, what it does is it takes the zombie story and it attempts to give it an entirely different spin, a spin you've never seen in a movie. And it does it by giving a reason for why a zombie eats another person. I mean, it is a lot of that, the hunger. They can only eat human flesh, and so they have to satiate that hunger. But he talked about that I don't want to spoil anything, but there is a reason why they go for the brain, and it does something for them. And I found myself going, that's actually interesting. I never really had thought about why it's always brains in these zombie films. This made sense of that, and I think it was a really good bridge between the zombie horror genre, and some action and romantic films. If you've watched the trailer, I think it comes across as much more of a comedy than the actual movie itself is. It is funny. And there are some moments in it where I was laughing out loud at things that were said or done. But there is also a great deal of heart and emotion in this film that I didn't expect it to have. I thought it would be much more campy in what it did, and it's more straightforward, and some actual moments of some real tension and suspense. So I thought I did a marvelous job of that, but it can only do that if the people involved who are acting do their job. Did you find anybody amazingly great or terrible, or did everybody just kind of do a serviceable job?
I think there really weren't any standouts. I mean, the two leads are two people that I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to in the past. The male lead is the guy from X-Men First Class that played Beast, and then she was in I Am Number 4, which I never saw, but I recognize her face. But nobody like huge standout actors, and they did okay. They were believable enough as far as you can be for being a zombie that's come back to life. It's not like a character we can compare it to in anything. John Malkovich plays John Malkovich very well, but he's not given a whole lot of screen time to really get any kind of character development. I mean, I thought he was going to be a lot more prominent in the story, and he really wasn't. You're meant to think he's kind of this badass, which he is, but the story elements of his character move too quickly just because there's so little time that he's on there. The performances were cheesy, but I think that was the intention of this film. It's supposed to be cheesy, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean cheesy in a good way. Like Justin said, there's a lot of heart in this movie and a lot more drama than I was expecting, but I wasn't blown away by any of the performances.
Why John Malkovich is in this, I really don't know, because like you said, he has the screen he may be on it in the film maybe 5 minutes.
Literally.
I think it's they needed a name for funding.
Yeah,
you want the money.
Probably so, but I think you could have put anybody in the role and gotten the same level of performance. It's not a role that really requires a lot of chops. The lead actor is Nicholas Hoult, and he was in About a Boy, I think about 10 years ago. I enjoyed him quite a bit. Most of what you get from him is his voiceover, as far as dialogue goes. He gives a lot of voiceover in the early part of the film, and I love the read he gives it. It's casual, it feels natural, it flows. I thought they all did a good job. Nobody spectacular, but I didn't think anybody dropped the ball. Now, as far as just the production itself, the direction, special effects, things like that, do you think it was up to snuff?
I got kind of a love-hate relationship with the production of this movie because on one hand, I thought the CGI and makeup look really cheesy, but I also believe that's, again, part of the charm of the film is what it's going for. But the one thing I did like about that is I think there's a very precise and noticeable progression of this main character R as he's progressing from just worn-out zombie as he's getting less and less decayed as the story progresses, and it's just slight enough that you almost don't notice it until towards the end of the movie. It's very much, oh wow, he's almost a completely different character at that point. What did you think?
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the only negative element as far as the production goes, I think, are the bonies. The CGI for them was fairly, I wouldn't say abysmal, but just barely serviceable. They don't look that great.
Very obviously CGI.
Right, obviously CGI. And the zombies, we're not talking Walking Dead sort of zombies here. No gaping holes in faces. None of that. This is pretty much just kind of bloody and scarred, but nothing too gruesome. But yeah, I loved R's transformation through the film, and it was very gradual. I can't imagine, though, how much Nicholas Holt's eyes had to hurt from wearing those contacts throughout the entire film, because that's about the only thing that doesn't really change much, are those really zombie-esque contacts. But all in all, I thought it looked fine. It did what it needed to do. So all in all, Scott, what did you think of this film? What would you give it? 1 out of $10. Would you see it again?
Well, I gave it a 650, which sounds like pretty low for how highly I'm talking about this. But let me kind of explain. If there's action movies out there, you need to check your brain at the door, much like the Fast and Furious movies. This is the romantic comedy version of that. The continuity of this, I think, just doesn't make any sense as far as there's just silly things that happen that you just have to kind of accept. And if you can get past that, you'll enjoy it. Nothing's even close to Oscar-worthy, but it's a unique take on the overused zombie theme that has a bit of heart, and it made me smile on more than one occasion. So,
I loved this film. I really went in it with fairly lukewarm expect lukewarm. I didn't even mean it, and I'm still fucking brilliant with the puns. I went into it just expecting, a tween rom-com, and I was really quite surprised at how emotional it was, how emotionally honest the film was. And like I said, there are several times where I'm just laughing out loud at the funny things that are going on. But I also really enjoyed the interplay between R and Julie. I felt like her reactions to him were quite often exactly the way someone else would react to it. But his endearing desire to protect her and save her and keep her from being turned into what he is. I really enjoyed it. And by the time it was over, I was shocked at how much I enjoyed it. So if I had to give it 1 out of 10, easily an 8, maybe an 8.5, $8, $8.50 out of 10. I look forward to seeing this movie again. And I think it's one of the few romantic comedies aimed at a young adult audience that doesn't talk down to them. It's not just pretty people doing stupid shit. It's an actually interesting film and a good one. Really good. I was really surprised.